Hello, Frontend Nation. My name is Kent C. Dodds, and I'm really excited to be talking with you about why we should stop lying to our users, and we can do better. I want to direct you to epicweb.dev if you haven't already been there before. Also, typically when I give talks, I have everybody get up and get moving, get their blood flowing. We're remote, so I'm not going to make you do that. But I just want to call out that moving your body, however you're physically able to do, is an important aspect of learning because that blood flow is how your brain works. So you're getting off the hook on the air squats today, but make sure that you could pause right now or whatever, stand up and take a couple steps or something because that blood flow is important. All right, let's get started into things. The title of the talk is Stop Lying to Your Users. So I'm implying that you are lying to your users. How dare I? So let's start with what a lie is. Webster's Dictionary defines a lie as something that misleads or deceives. So the question is, what is our lie? What's the lie that I am suggesting we are telling to our users? So let's look at a couple of examples of this lie, and maybe you can figure out what I'm trying to get us to stop doing. Here's our first example. This is from chase.com. And when you go to chase.com, it just shows the footer and then things pop into place and we get a couple spinners in places, things fade in. This is lying to you. It's lying to your users or lying to Chase's users. And frankly, it's a pretty bad user experience. So this is one example of the lie that we're telling. Let's take a look at another example. So this is Wikipedia. This was back when they were doing some fundraising, which I appreciate. So the lie, it has nothing to do with the fact that Wikipedia can't be sold or anything like that. That's fine. And I appreciate that we have Wikipedia that enables us to do this. But here I'm going to pause it. It's a little distracting while we're talking here. So as the Wikipedia article loads, then we get this notice here that they're doing some fundraising. You can click on maybe later, I already donated, or close. Of course, you can give an amount to Wikipedia. And so this is another example of the lie that we tell to our users. So maybe you're starting to get the idea, but let's take a look at another example. This one's actually a little bit humorous. So actually here, if we come back to this, the 2018 Hawaii false missile alert, if you're not familiar with that, this was in Hawaii. There was an alert that went out to everybody's smartphones saying that there was a missile coming and everybody needed to seek shelter. It said, "This is not a drill." It was because somebody accidentally sent the actual alert rather than a test alert. And so at that time, somebody put together an example of what might have happened. I don't think this is actually what happened, but it was just kind of a funny thing. Like, oh, maybe they went to send the test warning and then an ad popped up in place before they clicked and they ended up clicking the actual warning. Like I said, I don't think that's actually how this happened, but this is another example of the lie. And so the user's trying to click on send test warning, then the layout changes. So maybe this is getting you a little bit closer to the lie that I'm talking about. Let's take a look at another pretty related example. I played chess a little bit and realized I'm very bad at it. But after I lost this game, let's say I wanted to rematch this person. I go to hit rematch, but then I'm accidentally buying a can of Coke or something. So this is another example of a lie where I accidentally performed the wrong action. So maybe we're getting pretty close. We've got one more though that might make you second guess yourself. It doesn't just have to do with ads. So here's youtube.com. The biggest lie of them all. So here, when you go to youtube.com, the first thing that it does is send an HTML file from the server. And then it's downloading JavaScript in the background. And here, we'll pause it right here. So this HTML file has just enough information in it to show some fallback state right here. but not enough to have the search bar. And my objective is to search for Studio C, my favorite comedy group. And so I'm forced to wait for that bar to show up before I can perform my search. This is downloading 1.3 megabytes of JavaScript to get to this view. It's actually even worse if your theme doesn't match what they send to the index.html, because if it doesn't, then they force a full page refresh from JavaScript to make that work. And yeah, it's not fantastic, to be honest. So now we've downloaded enough JavaScript to render some user-specific data. So like it's rendering this stuff, it's rendering these videos and things, and then it's rendering the search bar. Unfortunately, that 1.3 megabytes of JavaScript just wasn't quite enough, because you'll notice that I type in a search term, I hit enter, and my search term is cleared. I do it again, I hit enter, search term is cleared. And so this is kind of frustrating for me as a user. What's going on is we downloaded 1.3 megabytes of JavaScript, which is enough to display some user-specific data. Of course, it also downloaded some data, and it was enough to display the input, and it was even enough to make it so that when you type a search term and hit enter, that input is cleared, but it wasn't enough to actually perform the search. This happened to me as a real user. It's not just like something I was going hunting around for examples of the lie that I'm trying to tell you about. This actually happened to me as a user, and I was very surprised and frustrated. So once that last bit of JavaScript is downloaded, I can finally perform my search, and things are working as expected. But that second set of JavaScript was another 500 kilobytes of JavaScript just to make that search work. Yeah, that's a terrible lie. So let's talk about what this lie is all about. The lie is, we're ready for you. This is us lying probably to our users. But we can do better. This is Mark Texan. He has this video series, and he often will say, let's do better. I love it. I love this idea. And I like the attitude. So we're going to bring that attitude to all of you today. How can we do better? Here's how you do better. If the app isn't ready, don't make it look like it is. That's the principle. I like principles. I like thinking about how do we distill this down into something that I can apply in a bunch of different scenarios. This is it. If the app isn't ready, don't make it look like it is. So let's talk about chase.com first. We show the footer, we show the like spinners and all of this stuff. And we're going to talk about how we can make this experience a better one for users. So at this point, the user is like, oh, I guess this is chase.com right here. But it's not. We had to load some data so that we know what we display here. So here, if I have already signed in once before and I said, remember my username, this is going to be different. Maybe if I'm a business customer, it will show the business route instead of the personal route initially. They've got like a bunch of dynamic stuff going on here. And so my guess is that this is their index.html that is on a CDN. And then this is all the dynamic stuff that's loaded via JavaScript later. And so they've got some interesting constraints here, probably familiar to a lot of you, the situation that you're dealing with. But it doesn't have to, like, even with those constraints, it doesn't have to be such a bad user experience. So let's see how we can do better. What we could do is like maybe use a CDN, but like I said, they're already using a CDN for the HTML, and it's a terrible experience. So that's not going to work because we have just so much dynamic stuff going on it. And maybe even the sizes of different things are going to be different. And so that's just not going to be enough. The best solution here is to use server-side rendering and cookies. And like the fact is that there's just so much dynamic stuff going on in here that depends on the user, that it's better to just go to the server, send the response from the server as it is specific to the user. And a lot of people will look at this and say, but Kent, then my costs go up because now I've got to hit the server every time a user needs a request, whereas before I could just hit the CDN. Well, I've got news for you. Guess what the JavaScript is doing right here? Oh, here, let's back that up. There we go. What do you think the spinner is representing? That's representing a server request. So it's not like you're actually saving yourself any requests to the server. In fact, by doing this all from the client, it's more likely than not that you're making a bunch of requests from the client to your server and hitting a bunch of endpoints for JSON. And so if instead you used SSR, then the SSR server, maybe that can be making a bunch of requests or whatever, but it's probably closer to your database anyway, and to whatever other downstream services you've got. And so this could actually be a cost-saving measure. The other concern that people will say is, well, CDN is distributed all over the place, and so it's going to be faster. It's going to serve that index HTML faster. And yeah, it will serve that terrible experience faster. You're right. So, I mean, like there are things that you can do to make even the SSR faster. You can distribute server rendered stuff now on the edge. You distribute your data, distribute your stuff. That all comes with its own set of trade-offs. But I think I would be, for myself, I'm more interested in a good user experience as far as that page load is concerned than like the concern that I'm going to send the user a terrible experience, but at least it's faster. So that's something that we could do. And as I was making this slide, I was like, yeah, that looks like a meme. Okay, let's talk about this Hawaii false missile alert thing, where this pops in. So the lie is you are ready to read the article. Like once we get to this phase or this stage right here, we're like, oh, sweet, I can read the article. I'm going to start reading on the morning of January 13, yada, yada, yada. And then this thing pops in and oh, like my reading was interrupted. The app was not ready, but it looked like it was. So we're lying. The way that this works is when you say I already donated or maybe later or whatever, then Wikipedia sets a cookie in your browser to say whether or not this should be loaded in. So we could do better than what they're doing right now. So let's assume that server rendering stuff and distributed on the edge, like that's always going to be the best user experience, period. Like you SSR on the edge with data distributed to the edge, that's always going to be a better user experience. But we can't always do that. There are other constraints that make it really difficult for us to do that. And in some cases, like basically impossible. There are trade-offs there. In particular to like consistency and stuff like that. So let's assume that for some reason we can't do SSR in this case. So could we still do better? Well, remember that they're setting a cookie that says whether or not, or that says that the banner should be hidden. And so if the banner is hidden, then why can't we just have this like little bit of script at the top that says if the cookie includes that, then add a class name to the document element that says hide fundraising. And then you can just use CSS to hide that, that area. And then if that class doesn't exist, then you just leave some space there so that the user isn't having things jump around. So like it may take a moment for the content to load in or whatever. Maybe that's dynamic. I don't know how they're doing that, or the situation that you find yourself in that's similar. But yeah, maybe you can just have something load in over time, but you just leave a space for it. And you can know that right from the get-go. Stick this script in the head before the fundraising document portion shows up. And now you don't have things jumping around and your users won't be mad. Maybe they'll donate more. All right, so let's talk about both of these. They're pretty similar. An ad loads in. Yeah, we don't want to have things jumping around as the ad loads in. This is actually kind of similar to the previous example where like something jumps in after the rest of the page is loaded. So we can do better here and it will be kind of similar, well, a little bit. Here's what we do. We burn all the ads. Just destroy ads. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes you can't, but sometimes you want to, right? You're just like, I hate ads so much. Like could we just not do ads? But no, like this is how lots of apps actually work. So here's the actual solution. You just talk to whoever you need to talk to say, hey, I'm going to make this space and you got to fill this space. And I realize that some ads are a little bit more dynamic than others, but this is something that you can push toward. Maybe you can do like just the best that you can, but aspect ratio is a great solution for this. So this is a video aspect ratio, but like whatever the aspect ratio is, you say, this is my space for the ad, and just make sure that that space is available so that when the ad loads in, it doesn't move anything around. And that would make the user experience much better. I don't care if it loads in late, that's fine, at least as long as the app, well, I guess I should clarify that. It would be great if the ad doesn't load at all. It would be great if the ad loads in on the like initial load or whatever. But given the constraints that we live with ads and stuff, probably can't really do that reasonably. So if you're going to load it in late, then at least leave a space so things don't move around when it finally loads in. And that will reduce the lie, or at least the impact of the lie. Okay, my favorite one, or my least favorite one, however you want to say it, YouTube.com. They send just enough in their index HTML to show this useless UI. And then when the UI, the gross amount of JavaScript downloads, then this search bar shows up, but not enough JavaScript is downloaded for it to actually perform a function. It gets cleared. You need another 500 kilobytes of JavaScript. So yikes. Let's do better. Let's do better at this. So here's the thing the reason that I am so especially frustrated by YouTube.com, aside from the fact that they've got so much money, they could absolutely solve this problem, and the fact that this problem still exists today after I've been yelling about it in publicly for like 3 years now. But the reason, or the thing that frustrates me the most, is that the web solved this problem when, like way back when HTML was standardized. HTML had forms. So let's talk about SSR. Like that would be the solution. That would just make the whole thing much better. SSR with progressive enhancement, awesome. But let's assume we're migrating. We can't just do that all at once. I believe they're still using Polymer. You can't server render Polymer. So here's what you do instead. In your index HTML, you put in a form. You just render that search input. I don't understand why they don't just render the search input in that index HTML and have an action, have an input with a name and a submit button. And all of a sudden that form will perform the action that it's supposed to perform. The browser does not need your JavaScript to submit a form. It's so frustrating to me. And so this like, I want to go get a job at YouTube and solve this problem and then quit, like turn in my 2 weeks, because this is the simplest thing. And certainly I'm not at YouTube, so I don't understand the constraints that they operate under. But if this is something similar that you have at your company, you got like a search thing, please just put the search in and all the other interactive bits that can just be forms, just put that in your index HTML. Even if you can't get to server rendering yet, just use the platform. That's the solution. Use the primitives that the platform has had for us since the beginning, and your user experience will be better. So I don't know about the constraints, but I do know about the user experience and the capabilities of the platform upon which we build. And I know that this could be solved if they would just use the platform. So there you go. That is how we can do better with YouTube. So here's the fun thing about making a talk like this. As I'm preparing the talk, I'm thinking, you know what? If I just give this talk, people are going to get all up in my face about the fact that my website, my personal website, is lying. And so before this talk, this image was that would pop in and everything would get bumped down. This image as well. And so I solved that problem so that things are consistent. I like the animation. That's fine. Like these things are moving. I think that's a cool experience. But this stuff down here is not getting bumped around all over the place. So if the user lands on the page and they start scrolling, things aren't going to bounce around for them. So I did better. You can too. And this is how I did it, just aspect ratio. That was it. It was like not hard at all. So you can do better. We can do better. I believe in you. Here are a couple of resources, just MDN. Learn the platform, use the platform. I have a written version of this talk as well, so feel free to take a look at that. And I just want to say you're great. Thank you so much for listening to my talk. See ya.